Imagine you are in Lafayette, Louisiana, a perfectly ordinary suburban backyard. Except it is not ordinary at all. There is a full runway, a landing mat, and a pole vault pit where most families would have a lawn chair and a barbecue grill. It is a Tuesday afternoon, and the kid sprinting down that runway is 4 years old. His name is Armand Duplantis, and right now, in the spring of 2026, he has just cleared 6 meters and 31 centimeters in Uppsala, Sweden. The 15th time he has broken a world record that already had his own name on it. He flew over a bar higher than the roofline of most two-story houses, and when his feet touched the mat, he looked almost bored. Here is what nobody tells you about that jump. According to basic physics, Duplantis should not be able to do what he just did. Not as a figure of speech. Literally. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why, and you will never watch a pole vault the same way again. I am Sebastian, physical therapist and performance analyst. Today we trace how one body, out of 8 billion on this planet, ended up built for exactly one thing. We start in a backyard in Louisiana, move through the strangest family story in the history of track and field, and end at the edge of what human physics actually allows. Greg Duplantis was one of the best pole vaulters the United States had ever produced in the early 1980s. American high school record holder, fast, technically sharp, and completely overshadowed by one man. We will get to that man shortly. First, Greg meets Helena. Helena Isos is a Swedish heptathlete. 7 events: high jump, long jump, hurdles, shot put, sprint. The athlete who is good at everything and best at nothing. Her own words. They meet at Louisiana State University, where she has crossed the Atlantic to compete. A pole vaulter and a heptathlete, an American who runs down a runway for a living, and a Swede who can do anything athletic asked of her. They build a life in Lafayette, and they build a backyard. A World Athletics feature describes it as an athletic playground. Full pole vault runway and pit, trampoline, trees with ropes, bars to climb. A family friend remembers a rope hanging 30 feet in the air, and little Armand, barely tall enough to reach the kitchen counter, racing up it just to pluck a leaf from the top. The boy who would one day clear over 6 meters was not training. He was playing. That distinction is going to matter. By age 7, Duplantis had already broken his first world record. Not a regional record, not a junior national title, a world age group best. By 10, he was jumping heights that beat the existing records for 11 and 12-year-olds too. He was beating children who had not been born yet for those marks. A report from that time describes him using a pole rated for a maximum of 90 pounds. He weighed around 80. He was literally below the minimum body weight for his own equipment. In his teenage years, a decision had to be made. Armand holds dual citizenship, American through his father and Swedish through his mother. A Swedish youth coach named Jonas Anselm reaches out to the family. Via Facebook of all things, Greg says no at first. He wants his son to represent America. Then Anselm makes a different offer. The role comes with Greg himself as part of the national team setup. The whole Duplantis operation moves to Sweden together. And here is the part that still irritates some people in the United States. A kid born in Louisiana, raised on American soil, trained by his American father, chooses to compete under a Swedish flag. Some called it a betrayal. Others called it a business decision. American media reported on a Louisiana-born vaulter winning Olympic gold for Sweden, with something between confusion and wounded pride. You can drop your opinion in the comments. Armand himself has said it felt natural, not a betrayal of one country, a completion of who he already was. What does the body of the greatest pole vaulter alive actually look like? 1 meter 83, 79 kilograms. Nothing screams impossible. He looks like someone you might pass jogging in the park. And then you find out his 100-meter personal best is 10 seconds and 37 hundredths. In the race where he set that mark, in Zurich in 2024, he beat Karsten Warholm, the 400-meter hurdles world record holder, in a flat sprint. Warholm is not a slow man. Why does that sprint speed matter so much? The pole vault is an energy conversion problem. You sprint generating kinetic energy. You plant the pole, transferring that energy into the bend. The pole stores it like a compressed spring. When it straightens, that stored energy launches you upward. No sprint, no spring. No spring, no height. Research consistently shows that approach speed at takeoff is the single most predictive variable for final height. Elite male vaulters in the 6-meter range hit the plant point at roughly 9.5 to 10 meters per second, 36 kilometers per hour, carrying a 5-meter pole in their hands. And this is where the physics gets genuinely uncomfortable. There is a formula: 1/2 times mass times velocity squared equals mass times gravity times height, which calculates how high an object can rise if you convert its kinetic energy entirely into vertical movement. At 10 meters per second, that gives you roughly 5 meters of center of mass rise. That is the absolute ceiling if every joule from the sprint became height and nothing else. Duplantis clears 631. The pole is not a cheat. It does not add energy to the system. It is a temporary storage device. But what it does allow is something pure sprinting cannot. It lets an athlete convert horizontal momentum into vertical height with far greater efficiency than jumping alone. The extra meter above the physics limit does not come from nowhere. It comes from how perfectly a body can load and unload that storage device. And nobody in history has done that better than Duplantis. The mechanism behind it is called the stretch shortening cycle. Think of a rubber band. Stretch it fully, load it, release it at exactly the right moment, and the snap is explosive. Every muscle tendon unit in your body works this way. In pole vault, this cycle fires in a full cascade, from the ankle through the knee, the hip, the core, the shoulder, and finally both arms in the push-off at the top. Watch Duplantis in slow motion, and something looks almost wrong. His inversion is slower and more controlled than almost any other elite vaulter. He is not fighting the pole, he is riding it, staying long, staying elastic, waiting for the exact millisecond the pole wants to give everything back. And then every muscle in that chain fires at once. Where other vaulters waste energy fighting the system, Duplantis flows through it. The metal socket in the ground where the pole plants, the plant box, has been responsible for some of the most catastrophic injuries in the history of track and field. A study in the American Journal of Sports Medicine tracked 32 catastrophic pole vault injuries over 16 years. Half of those athletes died. Another 19% were permanently disabled. Every time Duplantis runs at 36 kilometers per hour toward a metal hole in the ground, his nervous system has decided, over 2 decades of repetition, that this is fine. In 2024, at a meet in France, he felt a slight hamstring tightness after a clearance and walked away from the competition. His manager confirmed that continuing could have caused a full muscle tear. He walked away from a height that would win almost any competition on the planet because one twitch felt slightly off. That is not a personality trait. That is neural calibration built over a lifetime. Pole vault coaches describe it as the most athletically demanding event in track and field. Real-time motor decisions made while upside down in the air, at speed, with a metal box inches away. Neuroscience tells us the window between roughly ages 1 and 6 is one of the most critical periods for motor development. Myelination, wrapping neural pathways so they conduct signals faster and more reliably, is exceptionally active in early childhood. Motor patterns rehearsed during this window are not just learned. They are built into the physical architecture of the brain. Duplantis started running down a runway before he could read. His cerebellum does not think about the vault. It runs a program. When the pressure of a world record shuts down conscious thought, his own words were that he pretty much blacks out, that his body takes over his mind. What takes over is not instinct. It is infrastructure, which brings us to the man whose shadow Duplantis has been vaulting out of since childhood. July 13, 1985. Paris. A 21-year-old Soviet athlete prepares to attempt something that has never been done. The 6-meter barrier is what the 4-minute mile was 30 years earlier, a symbolic wall the human body is not supposed to cross. Around 5,000 people in the stadium. 4 days since Bubka's first child was born, he clears 6 meters on his third attempt, bar grazing his chest and staying up. Later, he reveals he flew in that morning, jet-lagged, convinced to attempt the record by a bonus offer from the organizers. A new father, exhausted, competing for a check, clearing the most significant barrier in the history of his sport. That detail alone tells you everything you need to know about Bubka. He broke the world record 35 times total, held the outdoor record, 6 meters 14, from 1994 until Duplantis arrived. Both men stand 183. Bubka competed at around 80 kilograms, Duplantis at 79. Nearly the same human on paper, completely different engines underneath. Bubka ran at close to 10.1 meters per second and used stiffer poles because his raw force could bend them. Duplantis uses softer poles because his advantage is not force. It is efficiency. Reports suggest Bubka's contract paid around $40,000 to $50,000 per world record. By raising the bar 1 centimeter at a time, he turned his own dominance into a financial system. World Athletics now pays $100,000 for a world record at championships. Diamond League meets offer a minimum of $50,000. Bubka invented the strategy. Duplantis inherited it. 1 centimeter. $100,000. Neither of them is just an athlete. Bubka himself settled part of the legacy debate with unusual generosity. He publicly said Duplantis had a fantastic chance at Olympic gold and could go on to add further centimeters. He blessed his successor. Italian world-class vaulter Elisa Molinarolo put it more bluntly, "He is doing another sport." Highest compliment she could give. Also the most accurate but mechanical summary of his career. So how does a body like this actually get built? Sports genetics identifies a gene variant, sometimes called the speed gene, as one of the most documented markers in elite power athletes. Consistently overrepresented in explosive jumpers and sprinters, linked to greater fast-twitch muscle function. We do not know Duplantis' specific genetic profile. That is private. But his father is a 5'80" vaulter, and his mother is a multi-event power athlete. As Greg put it, from Helena came the long legs and the calmness. From him came the speed, the aggression, and the pole vault skills. The same researchers who study these markers always add, a favorable genetic profile without training will never reach world class. Environment is decisive, which brings us back to the backyard, the ropes, the trampoline, and a family that built a playground that happened to also be a laboratory. Helena said she never had to push Armand towards sport. He was self-motivated. She and Greg created the environment. The obsession was entirely his. That distinction matters because sports science is clear. Early single-sport specialization before puberty is associated with burnout, overuse injury, and dropout. Duplantis is the exception that proves the rule. And the reason he is the exception is precisely that it never felt like a program. It felt like play. He said it himself. Sometimes I am on the runway and I think I am a kid again, jumping in my garden. There are athletes born at the right time. There are athletes born with the right body. Once in a generation, someone arrives with both and spends every day of their childhood doing exactly what their nervous system was built to do. Duplantis became the greatest pole vaulter in history because of a father who trained him without projecting his own unfinished career. A mother who gave him long legs and extraordinary calmness. A backyard that treated flight as a normal after-school activity. And a nervous system that spent over 20 years memorizing one runway, one pole, and one bar. And still, every single time he jumps, it looks like something the human body should not be able to do. He said the sky is the limit. At 6 meters 31, we are starting to believe him. If this video made you think, Here is the question I want to leave you with. We showed today that pure kinetic energy from the sprint only accounts for around 5 meters. He is over 630. In the next video, we are going to model, using biomechanics and physiology, exactly where the human ceiling for this event actually is. The numbers are going to surprise you. Hit subscribe so you do not miss it.